Welcome to Columbus Report on Waycross Community Media. I'm Dana Gagnon, and I am here in the studio with Ohio Representative Jessica Miranda from our 28th District, the grade 28.
Yes,
I know,
thank
is
you.
the tagline. Thank you so much for coming to the studio.
Thank you for having me.
And Jessica is here to make sure we could stay up to date on what's happening in Columbus. Sometimes I think it feels removed for us, and all of that stuff that you are working on in Columbus is directly related to our neighborhoods and what we're doing. So I want to make sure that we get to cover some of that. First of all, you have now survived budget season. So what does that look like? What do we have to know?
We got through it. So we passed the operating budget, the state operating budget last year. It's required by your state legislature to do this every biennium. And I will say this is probably one of the largest budgets, if not the largest budget we passed in history, because we had so much revenue here in Ohio, thanks to the Biden administration, and thanks to, so many other things that have been just pouring in. And so it was $69 billion. The three biggest pots of that, of course, is for education, for healthcare, and for incarceration and criminal justice. So it is a huge undertaking for both of the houses to come together, being the House chamber and the Senate chamber. And we kept some things in there that the governor wanted, which were good things. We did some good things. There was some horrible things. A budget is always a mixed bag, but we worked on it in a bipartisan fashion and got it done on time, I might add, which is a great thing. So state government didn't shut down. And here we are now working on the next big budget.
And that's a good point. There is no non-budget season, is there?
That's
Because
true.
you finish one and then it's immediately time to start working on the next thing.
That is true.
In the one that you just passed, what are some of the specific things that local residents should know about?
Yeah, so we just passed House Bill 2, which has a lot of elements of what is typically called our capital budget. So capital is for capital projects, which means anything in our communities that requires a little bit of extra help via state funding to get the job done and make our communities and our counties better, we like to invest in those things. So what we did through House Bill 2 is there is a significant amount of money for local jail funding, which is obviously very needed. It's an outdated funding model, and we've put some more investment into that, and I know Hamilton County especially will benefit from that as well. A huge piece of House Bill 2 was $600 million to the OFCC, which basically is the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission. That's what you see funding new school buildings, new rest areas across the state, and any other state facilities. And so being a product of public schools myself and former school board president for Winton Woods, where we used a lot of that OFCC money for our beautiful new school buildings, that was a big and probably the most important piece for me in my leadership, was getting more of that funding to OFCC. And then there's four things in particular that are coming back to Hamilton County in that. $4 million for a Xavier University project for their College of Health, right? So what we're seeing now since the pandemic is we're seeing a shortage of teachers, we're seeing a shortage of law enforcement officers, and we're seeing a shortage of healthcare heroes. I have my opinions and my assumptions on why that is, because you can't attack any given career path for so long and blame them for things and expect them to keep showing up smiling every day. But Xavier University is investing in a way to train young doctors and keep them here in Ohio. Because the problem we have here in Ohio is this brain drain, where we educate our young folks and then they just leave because rhyme or reason they don't want to be here and do their career. So Xavier is partnering with the state to try to make them stay. So $4 million going to Xavier, $8 million going to UC Health, $22 million we allocated to the Cincinnati Convention Center project, which I'm sure you've been talking a lot about.
Yes.
That's going to be a huge, huge undertaking. So the state is helping out. And then there's $8 million for the Riverbend 2.0 project in there as well for the CSO. So those are the kind of the four big elements for Hamilton County.
And that's a big deal because we see things happening in Columbus, and we see big numbers, and we see House Bill 2 and what does that have to do. And I appreciate your coming here and making it local. This is stuff that has local relevance. And I think when we hear, sometimes we might think, okay, well, UC, Xavier Convention Center. Well, what about me? I live on this street in this town or this township. But all of that is what will bring more people to this area, hopefully keep more people living in this area when they're educated and working here in healthcare, hopefully. And we see new healthcare facilities going into Springfield Township, just opened a new one. Yep. And we need those brains.
Yeah.
And we need them to want to live here. And so we need all that facility. We need to have the Riverbend projects. We need to have the convention center to be bringing people here. So, and it sounds like, especially with the capital projects, things that small communities can't do without the state helping them.
Yeah.
So that's a big deal.
It's about quality of life. You know, I think I talk about this as much and as often as I can, because if you look up our job description of what we do, it's to create a quality of life for people that they deserve. These kinds of allocations do just that. And these aren't, of course, the only allocations we do. It's just a snapshot of the most recent one.
Right, I know that, and folks who are wondering about details about any of the things, because we're covering stuff pretty quickly, can go to your website. Your section of the ohiohouse.gov site will list specifically what bills you're sponsoring, what you're working on, what's achieved. You can click on a specific bill and see where it is in the process. Oh, look, it's gone all the way through the House, and now it's in the Senate and has to go. All of those details that are kind of hard to keep track of remotely when it's not what you're doing every day. You live and breathe them and know them all by heart, I know. But
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. ohiohouse.gov. ohiohouse.gov. You can look up me and everything I'm working on, or you can put in your address to find out who your state representative is or your state senator, and all of that information is literally at people's fingertips.
Is there, looking forward now, that's what we've just seen happen. Looking forward, are there any specific challenges that you're working on at the moment?
Yeah, so right now we're working on the rest of the capital budget. Okay. House Bill 2, encompasses a big chunk of the capital budget, but it's not all of the local community projects. So in each House district, and therefore in each Senate district, we have allocations that we can do, right? This capital budget is kind of a pool of money that is what's left after every biennium that we can put into capital projects. So to give you an example, for here in the city of Forest Park, Forest Park is asking for $500,000 to make our Forest Park Senior Center handicap accessible. So we can finally use that lower level, right? And get some more space, get some more programming, and keep providing the programming that's currently happening, which I know is super important to all of our residents here. And we've taken on the undertaking of making that the teen center as well. So now the wear and tear of that building is becoming a lot more amped up, if you will, because we got young folks in and out of there. So I'm working really, really hard to get that money back here to Forest Park. So what the capital budget does is it allows us to bring our tax dollars back home. And so Forest Park isn't the only ask. Blue Ash has an ask. Madeira has an ask. Montgomery has an ask. Sharonville, all of these local communities have the ability to make an ask for any one of their community projects that they need just that little extra help, or maybe just those last dollars in the door to get it done. And then, of course, we have asks from the rest of the county, too, whether it's the Cincinnati Observatory or whether it's a project in Silverton or Lincoln Heights. There's asks that come from all over the county, and we have to go through those as your lawmakers and decide where we're going to put the money, how much, and what we can do with the pool of money that we have. And I think the total pool, what's coming to Hamilton County specifically, will be somewhere around $24 million. We typically glide between the $20 to the $27 million range each biennium, so we'll see what it is this time around.
Okay, we want the most.
That's right.
And I think I'd like viewers to know that we look at government and we look at actually, and a lot of what's reported because they need the most clicks and the most views is at the national level. And I think it feels very removed from our daily life and our living rooms, or wherever you're watching this. And you are that personal neighborhood connection from the communities in the 28th district to Columbus. We have someone in the room. Hamilton fans in the room where it happens. We have someone in the room where it happens. I won't sing, it's okay. It's perfectly normal.
I might, if you keep going with the Hamilton quotes. It's my favorite.
Hope. Oh my gosh, we can only hope. Let's keep thinking of more. But that connection, and that's the whole mission of what Waycross is connecting people to their local government, and your willingness to be part of that mission and always come in here and let people know what's going on. And on that end, if residents have a question or they want to know what's going on, but Columbus seems far, do they have a way that they can reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I always say we run a very tight ship in my office on an open door policy. So the door is always open all of the time. My email address to my office comes straight to me, is rep28, rep28 at ohiohouse.gov. And then my office phone number is 614-466-8120. And I'll say it again, 614-466-8120. And then, of course, if people want more than that, more than the Ohio House website, they can follow me on all social media platforms. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, well, I guess it's now called X, Threads, LinkedIn, as well as TikTok. So I'm not in the TikTok hater club. I try to post to TikTok as much as often as possible because I think that's really reaching young folks. I see that in my own daughters, the things that they learn from TikTok. So I'm on all of those platforms. My handle for most of those is at Jessica E. Miranda, Jessica E. Miranda. And then Facebook is facebook.com/Jessica4Ohio.
And I have been on not every one of those platforms, but I have seen you put a lot of regular content, keeping people connected to what you're doing and interacting with people who are following you there. And so definitely a really good resource. And I like that you're reaching out on different platforms because you're right, people are in different places. Some people will watch something on cable, some people will watch something online, some people will watch a reel and then maybe get interested and look at it later. I have not yet started Waycross dance government videos. Don't know if we need to.
That sounds like a fun idea, though.
Maybe Hamilton should be involved.
Yeah. That's a great idea.
But that's not really the focus here.
Yeah.
But if you watch this and you have opinions on that, you should maybe reach out to Waycross and let us know.
Yeah.
What are some of the other things you would really like residents to know about what's going on in Columbus?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much. Upcoming here on April the 10th, we have the Governor's State of the State address. This is something great, I think, for folks to watch because it gives you a clue into the governor's plans for the rest of his term, the remainder of his time there, because, he's termed out. This is his last term as governor. So he'll have a very long speech about all of the things he wishes to accomplish by the time his term comes to an end. And, it'll be our job or not as the House chamber and the Senate chamber to get those things done, right? So we're going to be very intently listening to what he has to say. And I will just point out, too, that since it's coming up so soon, I have made an ask to not only my entire caucus, but to our compadres across the aisle, as well as the governor, to wear their best Kelly green in honor of former auditor and former state representative Bridget Kelly, who just recently passed away. So she lost her battle with cancer. She was a really, really good friend of mine, and I got the honor of working side by side with her in the Statehouse and having her mentor me. And so we're going to do our best to honor her and her legacy and her commitment to public service on that day and sport some green on the Statehouse floor. So hopefully it'll be a sea of Kelly green to honor my friend Bridget and her legacy.
And I know as Hamilton County Auditor, just so present and connected to everything in the county. So hopefully we see a lot of green. That would would be fantastic.
She's blazed the trail for so many of us and really taught me, what constituent services is. I give a lot of credit to her in that regard, and we'll keep on doing what's right for the people and showing up for the people each and every single day, because that is truly what our job is about.
Now, we would like to say that it's all very idealistic and that there's not party focuses. And of course, we're nonpartisan here at Waycross. But we do watch the news, so we know that definitely affects how things are happening in Columbus. Are there projects, I know House Bill 1 is one of them, that you see bipartisan involvement with, that we can look forward to from here, or that we can exhort people that we're working with to support? What do we have on the agenda here?
Yeah, so we have a number of really good bipartisan priority bills that we have introduced this year. I would say what is left to look forward to, because we have such a short amount of time left in this General Assembly, just to remind folks who are listening, we have 2-year terms only. It goes by really, really fast for a state house term. And we will be gearing up to run for re-election come very soon. And then right after the election season, we'll go right into lame duck session. And lame duck is where everything that's left, which will be a lot, because we've kind of made some history this biennium with passing the least amount of bills in the history of Ohio, which is
interesting historical record.
Yeah,
yes, okay,
it's an interesting thing. I'm proud to say that 4 of those bills were mine in a bipartisan fashion, so we can talk about those in a minute. But it's definitely a good piece of historic data to talk about and why that is. But lame duck season will go very, very fast, very, very long. I remember there was one lame duck session where I didn't get home. I think I left Columbus at about 6 a.m. when we were finally done. Got home just in time to take my first grader to school. So I pulled in the driveway, got her in the car, off to school, and then I got home to rest. But
please tell me sleep came after that.
Yes, I took a little nap after that. It was well-deserved and much needed.
Well, and we don't see that part.
Yeah.
We see press conferences.
Yeah.
We see the Ohio Channel's wonderful coverage of what's happening in the chambers.
Yeah.
But we don't see what else is going on and staying up all night and
the human element, if you will, to public service.
Yeah.
Which is what I try to post as much as I can when I'm not that tired. I didn't post that much that day. But
yeah, that's fair.
When we have some steam, I try to post that as much and as often as possible on my social media channels, because I think it's relevant to remind folks of that we're not just these untouchable, stoic creatures in your state capital. We are real people with real families, with real jobs or businesses, and I want folks to know that about me, so that they know that they can reach out to me anytime they need something, especially as it pertains to state government, because I want to help, and that's what I'm there for, and I take that part of my job very, very seriously.
And you've already given us email addresses and phone numbers, so remember that if you're watching this and you're thinking, oh, is this for real? And I think your social media helps people feel comfortable, and yes, this is an actual person, and I'm comfortable reaching out with that. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell me about those 4 bills that you got to see passed.
Yeah, so the first one that has actually been signed into law by the governor is called the Scouts Honor Bill, the Scouts Honor Law. If anyone is familiar with the National Boy Scouts Settlement, trigger warning, I'm getting ready to talk about child abuse and sexual abuse. There is a national bankruptcy settlement with the Boy Scouts of America. Here in Ohio, we have about 1,911 Boy Scout survivors who are a part of that case. And because our statute of limitations laws here in the state of Ohio are the worst among all 50 states in the nation, a great resource for this is childusa.org. You can visit Child USA's website anytime, and they do a really great job of ranking all 50 states in civil statutes of limitations, criminal statutes of limitations, and basically showing what we're doing great or what we're not doing so great. And in the case of Ohio, unfortunately, we're not doing so great.
So what's the difference in the statute of limitations that we're looking at in Ohio versus other states?
The length of time people have to get justice, right? So, and I can speak from this, from an intimate level, because again, trigger warning, I'm getting ready to talk about sexual violence. I am a survivor of sexual violence and also of child sexual abuse. So when these Boy Scout survivors reached out to me, it was personal for me, and I, of course, jumped in to help them. My illustrious colleague from Hamilton County on the west side, Bill Seitz, jumped in to help too, and we made this bipartisan bill together to basically say that in the case of these Boy Scout survivors, there will be no statute of limitations barrier for them. Because what was going to happen to these guys and gals is if they were to get their settlement from the national piece, they would only get 30 to 40% of what was due to them because of how bad our statute of limitations laws are. So we've basically opened that up for them so that they have the capability of getting 100% of what is due to them in this settlement, which is a really good law. We worked on it in a bipartisan way. We reached across the aisle and decided that this we could agree on. The bigger piece of the apple we can talk about later, but at least this we can do for these 1,900 survivors here in Ohio, and let them get what they have, that they deserve, right, for the abuse they sustained.
That's a big number.
Yeah.
Not that one.
Yeah.
One is too many.
That's right. That's right.
So I don't want to imply that a bigger number makes it more serious.
Yeah.
But that's a lot of people needing help with that.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I think it does give encouragement to voters all across the whole district to know that when it's something really important, it doesn't get stuck and buried in something that's not going anywhere.
That's
so
right.
I think that's one of the things that really strikes me from that.
Yeah.
But these are the kind of things that you don't always know or are ready to talk about or ready to reach out until it was legally passed a statute. So I think that's a big deal.
It's just such a big deal for the people that are affected by this. And quite frankly, it's a big deal for all other sexual abuse survivors here in Ohio, because it shows you that you have lawmakers that are ready to act to do the right thing. And we had a very short timeline. We had to act very fast to get that done, and miraculously we were able to do it. And the governor has signed it into law. It is now official here in the state of Ohio, and it's going so well that other states are now copying what we've done. Indiana passed their version of the Scouts Honor Law, and I believe it's either Alabama or Mississippi, one of those neighboring states down there that, the two states that neighbor down there, I can't remember if it's Alabama or Mississippi, that also is passing this as well.
Well, that's a good story, because it went from one of the worst to, hey, we're a model, other people are copying us.
That's right.
I like that.
That's right. I love it. And I hope that we can do more of that kind of work in the future as we build these relationships across the aisle. So that's one.
Okay. What are the other ones?
The other three are a little bit simpler than that.
Okay.
So my bill with Representative Richardson across the aisle is about the military seals on high school grads' diplomas.
Okay.
So here in Ohio, there's two ways you can get that military seal. You know, we have all these different kind of seals for high school seniors.
Okay.
And, you know, it's competitive, and it's like a checklist for all of our high school seniors. They want to see how many seals they can get, or they want that seal for their one content area that they've dedicated their high school career to.
Okay.
So the military one you can get if you list in the service, any of the branches of the military, or if you do an ROTC program.
Okay.
Only two ways right now. What we've done with this bill that we've passed in the House, it's now in the Senate waiting to be passed on that side, is we've opened that pathway up to 4 different pathways now. So the first two, or you can go to a JROTC program, which is a very popular program for our students.
Okay.
Or you can enlist into one of the military academies, United States military academies.
Yeah. Okay.
So basically, whichever way our students choose to make that ultimate decision to serve our country, they should be qualified to get a military seal for that, and we have passed that in the House.
That definitely recognizes more ways of service.
Yes.
And let's face it, in Cincinnati, high school is important.
Yeah.
We care what
That's
the
right.
high school is and what's on that seal. So.
That is right. And we
Okay.
want to, give the students the honor they deserve for choosing that route, you know? I think there's valor in that, and there's respect in that, and we should respect their diploma with the proper seal. So we did that. The third one is, here we go.
Okay.
The big one. Since it's Women's History Month.
Yes.
This is very, very important. This is a bipartisan bill, House Bill 161.
Okay.
Fun fact, Ohio is one of 11 states where it's still legal to rape your spouse and get away with it. We have passed a bill that ends that marital rape loophole here in Ohio. Brings
Okay.
us in line with the majority of states in our nation who think that that is an archaic piece of code. Obviously, comes from a place where women were looked at as being property of their spouses. And another fun fact is that bill has been worked on by lawmakers since 1985. They've been trying to end this loophole since 1985. And I want to emphasize that because that's before I was born. That's how long this has been tried. And, you know, the process has failed each time. But I teamed up with another one of my colleagues across the aisle, got the blessing of my friend over on the west side, and we got House Bill 161 passed across the floor. And I'm happy to report it almost passed unanimously. We had one person from Xenia, Ohio, vote
Okay.
against that.
Okay.
But it still passed with 98 votes.
This started getting worked on in 1985. I was born yet, but we won't go there. And still too long, still too long.
Yes, way too long.
But it also means someone can't say this hasn't been talked about enough or we have to look into this more.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, this has definitely been looked into since 1985. So
That's right.
And like the other things you mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
that this was not partisan, that this was just an important thing that needed to not be buried under something else.
That's
So
right. And we
think
don't
that's
want to be of the last, I mean, we already are, but we don't want to be, and we don't want to be the last 5 of states
Yeah.
who still have this archaic loophole.
Still get in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll get
Yes.
in and we won't be the bottom 10 as long as
Okay.
we can get the governor to sign this by the end of the year.
Okay.
And the fourth bipartisan bill that we have gotten across the House floor this year is House Bill 167. Now, House Bill 167 is my bill with Representative Cindy Abrams over here in the Colerain-Harrison area, west side of Cincinnati or our county. She is a former police officer for Cincinnati Police Department, and I just support the hell out of our public servants in blue and our firefighters in red because they are who make our community safe, right? And so someone from the Great Oaks, who was a retired police chief in my district, reached out and he said, you know, we went through this whole process to be able to train police chiefs here, and they're still sending them all to London, Ohio. And I said, London, Ohio? I didn't know there was a place called London, Ohio, and also, what is that, you know? And he, you know, all the cops tell me in my area, they're like, there's nothing to do up there when we go up there for training. There's not even a restaurant on that, you know, exit. There's a hotel that they stay in, but it's just a place where OPATA sends all of our police chiefs to be trained.
Okay.
And it's a very, very rural area, right? So what we want to do with House Bill 167 is allow the 5 places in Ohio that have done this training, that have received this certification from the Ohio Attorney General to do this training, to allow them to actually do it, right? Kent State, a couple other universities, and then Great Oaks, they're it. They've got the certification to do the police chief training. I don't know if you've been over to the Great Oaks in Sharonville, but they have a wonderful range and training facility for our police officers. And so House Bill 167 would allow regional training for police chiefs and anyone else who is in line to take a leadership position in that law enforcement department, maybe an assistant chief or someone who's in line to be the chief in the future, and they can do that training. It's expanded training for police chiefs and sergeants and lieutenants and things like that. And we want to do that so it's local, right? We can send our folks, our men and women in uniform, to a closer, more regional area for training, and they'll have a home base for that.
And that's so much more cost effective for the department.
Yes.
We're looking at local departments trying to figure out how
Yep.
to, but nobody wants to cut training, so you want
Right.
that to be accessible. And I love the idea of having it accessible to more than one member of the department, because it's not always that one person who is on call making the decisions.
Yeah, and like every other career, there's a lot of turnover, right?
Yeah.
And you don't want to have to spend the money to keep sending folks all the way up to London, Ohio for an entire week, because that's how long the training is, when you can send them right here to Sharonville in the Great 28, right? So we've passed that unanimously across the floor of the House, and it's now in the Senate. So again, I sound like a broken record, but contact your senator if this bill is important to you and ask them to support and pass House Bill 167.
Well, and that's why I wanted to mention ohiohouse.gov, because if you're following this conversation and you've lost a thread of HB and a number, you can see them there, and you can click on them and see where they are and see, who do you need to call? This one's important to me. I need to make sure they know.
Yep.
And that applies for everything you do at the Statehouse.
That's right. We want to hear from folks for what they are supportive of, right? But most of the time we're hearing what they're not supportive of. We want to hear the things you would like to see passed and see us get done.
And that doesn't always get talked about as much, which is why it becomes on us to have to go look.
Yep.
I appreciate this opportunity because we get to share some of those things that are happening, things that are bipartisan, cool things that have moved forward and that we can look to and let our state Senate representatives know what's going on, senators. And
the real work, if you will, of what we're doing for folks versus, all of the dog whistle politics that seem to cloud every day. There's actual, real, substantive work that we're trying to get done for people of Ohio. And these 4 bills are a perfect example of that.
Yeah, they really are. There are things that are not getting buried. There are things that we don't necessarily see on broader regional broadcasting. Yes, I am tooting my own access horn here, but that's why I love this opportunity to get to talk to a little more detail and say, what's going on? What's going on up there? You have already let us know how residents can connect to you. Is there anything else you want to make sure that they know about before we wrap up?
I would just say, corruption is always top of mind here in Ohio because unfortunately, we've been deemed the most corrupt state by Forbes.
Okay.
Yeah, so to take it down a notch, we've talked about all of the good things that are happening, but unfortunately, there's other good things that I am working on that just can't get done because of the imbalance in the State House. And what I mean by that is the partisan makeup of the State House. We still have epic amounts of problems with corruption and trying to pass any of our anti-corruption bills. We can't get them to go anywhere, unfortunately. And we still have a huge problem with gerrymandering here in Ohio. There is hope on the horizon for that latter problem because what we've had to do, what you've seen happen the past couple of years, when we can't get stuff done in the supermajority in Columbus, people will turn that into ballot initiatives and put it on the ballot for folks to vote on. So you just saw, we got rid of the effort to take us to a supermajority type of situation for voters. So it would no longer be the choice of voters. It would be the choice of special interest groups dumping money into our state. We beat that back. We passed reproductive freedom for women. So another huge shout out here in Women's History Month.
Yes.
Because, no one should be able to tell us what we can and can't do with our bodies unless it's us and our family and our doctors. That's a private decision, not a government decision. And then, we passed adult use cannabis, right? Something we would have never got done in this super majority, super minority situation that we find ourselves in the State House. And where that comes from is gerrymandering. So the hope on the horizon is maybe, just maybe, and I think it will pass. I'm going to speak it into existence now, if you will, that the citizens, not politicians, effort will pass this November in this presidential election because it is past time that we take the pen out of the politicians' hands to choose their voters, and it's us, the citizens, that should be choosing our politicians. So hopefully that will pass in November, and then maybe we can inject some kind of proper representation as far as the partisan makeup is considered in Columbus, and then we can start churning out things that actually matter, like these anti-corruption bills. So if I can just take a minute to talk a tiny bit about what has happened with House Bill 6 and the Larry Householder corruption and all of that. Larry Householder was made speaker again, voted speaker again for the second time in his history. And that is what gave us the House Bill 6 scandal, where we bailed out a huge energy company here in Ohio that didn't necessarily need the bailout. And now we have seen with the arrest of Sam Randazzo, who was on PUCO, which is the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio, how corrupt that process is too. So my caucus has introduced a slew of bills to try to take an aim at this in multiple different avenues to rid our state of this possible corruption that could still happen in the future unless we do something about it. So I've reintroduced what's called the Ohio Anti-Corruption Act. This gets dark money, loopholes out of campaign finance. So if that's something you care about, that's House Bill 112. I could use all the help I could get from citizens reaching out to your state reps and your senators and even to the governor to move that through the legislative process, because we haven't even gotten a second hearing on that. We've only had our first hearing. And then the second thing that I just introduced recently is called House Bill 444. So it's like Blake Maislin 444, House Bill 444. But it is to tell the energy companies or utility companies here in Ohio that they can't then turn around and place the money that they are losing back onto the bills of consumers. I think you and I both know, I've especially seen it here, my utility bill last month went up $100. Why? That's a corruption tax. The money that our utility companies have lost because of this House Bill 6 scandal, they're basically having us as the utility payers and the taxpayers recoup that money. And so House Bill 444 would get rid of that. It's been passed in 4 other states. And I will say, because those 4 other states saw what happened here in Ohio, and they said, we're not gonna let that happen in our states. So we are the poster child.
That's one way to be an example.
Not to do, exactly, in the utility space. So, I feel the pain, along with all of my neighbors here in Ohio of those rising utility bills. And there's something we could do about it, which is House Bill 444. But again, it hasn't gotten a hearing yet. We did a whole press conference on that. We did a press conference surrounding all of our women-focused bills. I mean, every policy is a woman policy, but there's specifics like my Ohio Equal Pay Act and the banning of salary histories bill that we just introduced. And we did a press conference about those as well here in Women's History Month. So there's really good things we're working on that we unfortunately just cannot move because the balance isn't there. The political will isn't there, or shared by all of my colleagues, I should say, to actually do the right thing. But I'm gonna keep speaking truth to power as long as I can to try to make a difference in people's lives. And those are some of the things that aren't moving, but I need the support on.
I think that's why I love so much these moments is that we are hopefully addressing a whole lot of local residents that are not necessarily connected to a particular group or party. And my hope is that folks are hearing things and realizing, hey, this is important to me in one way or another, and realizing that they can have an influence. I want people to know that people have an influence on their government, because it's easy to feel sometimes you don't. And that it's just moving along. And there are people with really loud voices, so you feel like they must be the ones with the most influence, but they don't have to be. If all of us use our voice, and our voice is our vote, but it's an informed vote. And of course, Waycross does a lot to try to connect people to the information when they're making choices. And these are some resources and some places people can look for details, find out who to connect to, whether they to go to ohiohouse.gov, whether they go to other information sites that check your sources. Don't just randomly go places on the internet. Find out where they're getting their information from. I'll just, leave that. But because it's Women's History Month, and because of some of those recognitions we talked about, and because you mentioned how much Bridget Kelly mentored you, If there are young women watching now that think, I want to have an impact in government, what should I do? What should I be learning, training, practicing? What would you tell them?
I would tell them to reach out to the women that they see leading our county. We have tons of amazing women here in county government, city government. Out here in the suburbs, we have school boards, cities, villages, townships. For instance, the city of Blue Ash has made history this year. For the first time ever, they have a mayor and vice mayor who are both women at the same time, right? So that is fantastic. Reach out to those folks in local government. That's how I started. I started on the Winton Woods School Board. I was the youngest person to ever be elected to the school board, and therefore the youngest person to ever be the vice president and then the president. So there are people doing this work that care about our communities, and you should just reach out to those folks. And of course, like I said, open door policy with me, so you can always reach out to me and I can point you in the right direction. But it's very important to start local. That gives you the experience for anything else that comes after that. And it's much needed experience because quite honestly, there's such a lack thereof. Among the 99 people who are elected to the Statehouse in Ohio, in the House chamber, I should say, and that's a vital skill that we need.
And of course, Waycross covered many Winton Woods School Board's meetings that you presided over.
Yeah.
When you took that school board experience with you to the Statehouse, did you see direct ways that it assisted you?
Absolutely, because here's the problem, and here's why I ran for the school board in the first place, is to fix school funding, which we've done 2 of 3 steps to do that, right? We still have to do the 3rd in the next budget. Put a little plug in there for my colleagues, but you know, we have done what is needed to be done, and now we have to make sure we rein in the other things that are happening. But the reason I ran is because I looked at some of the folks who were serving in the Statehouse who were making these laws, most of the time unfunded mandates for our school systems, and I would say to myself, well, what experience do they have in public schools, right? Are they an educator? Are they a retired teacher? Are they, you know, someone who was an administrator, something, a board member, something? And they never were. They never had that local experience. So they're up there talking about and moving things through the legislative process and ultimately making those things laws that don't necessarily help out here on the local level. And so I took that experience to now sitting on the primary and secondary education committee, and I can ask questions in such a way that helps educate my colleagues who maybe don't have that kind of experience, but also help craft the kind of good, solid policy that our stakeholders want and need versus what our stakeholders don't have the time for or the resources for, right? Because there seems to always be this constant attack on teachers all of the time. And teachers are doing the best that they possibly can with the least amount of resources we could possibly give them. And that's one of the things I've worked on throughout my career at the Statehouse that we certainly need to still work on changing.
I really appreciate, again, your time to come in here. I feel like there's no ending.
Yeah.
We clearly need to do this more often because we keep thinking of something else we want to talk about.
Yeah.
What I'll do is I will wrap up our discussion now, but we will definitely have to plan to have some more. And maybe Hamilton, I don't know.
Yeah, and just in case I'm not back before November, I do want to emphasize one thing you said earlier, which is about voting and how crucial that is. From the Statehouse perspective, Ohio is one of 2 states now that has the worst restrictive voter ID law in the nation. Again, passed by the supermajority colleagues of mine across the aisle, and we just didn't have the numbers to beat that back. Tried to make it better, but it's not great. So take that into consideration, because I know there's this new thought amongst maybe a lot of young people that says, oh, my vote doesn't count. Oh, I don't need to participate. My vote's not going to change anything. Well, guess what? I flipped this district by 56 votes in 2018. That should tell you your vote matters, your vote counts, and please, for the love of everything, don't let anyone tell you your vote doesn't matter, because it certainly does, especially in these local races and these local Statehouse races. And like Dana has already pointed out, the Statehouse matters for every aspect of our lives here locally, whether it's city, county, state government. It's where everything, that's the funding source for everything. And if we don't put the right leaders in that state house, the ones that have the experience, that have the lived experience, we get lackluster results for our communities. And I want people to start paying attention to that, because that's the biggest piece. So please don't not vote. Please get out there and vote. November's election is probably one of the most important elections of our lifetimes. So we all need to get out there and vote. We need to get out there and vote and end gerrymandering, elect fantastic public servants, and it's a presidential election.
I use that race sometimes. I think at the presidential level, which we get the most press, because every regional station knows that applies to everyone, and we will all click on that story or read that story.
Right.
And so it's easy to feel like, but I'm just a little tiny drop in that vote. The local races, which affect your everyday life. At the state level, it affects where is money coming to in your local community,
right?
Even though it feels far away. At the county level, the county services are the services that assist everything that we're used to.
That's right.
And jobs and family services, roads, all kinds of things.
Yeah.
And absolutely at the city council, township trustee, whatever, village council, whatever your local makeup is, your school board,
right.
Those are the ones making decisions that hit your neighborhood. With the things that you wake up in the morning and think, my potholes, or there's no sidewalks, or what's going on in that empty building on that corner, I'd really love to see something there.
Yeah.
None of that is happening in DC.
Right.
Not that those votes are not important, but none of that stuff that affects your daily life is happening in DC.
That's right.
It's happening at so those votes with those little tiny margins, think of how important it is. So,
just like the nail situation in Springdale. Have you heard that story? The guy that was dumping nails all over the street and causing people's horrible, horrible issues with their tires that had to drive over all of these nails. And, if it weren't for the local Springdale City Council addressing that would have been terrible for the constituents of that area. But shout out to Mayor Hawkins in the city of Springdale and everyone else over there who helped fix that. And the guy has been caught and arrested now. And thousands and thousands of nails he was just dumping on the street.
Okay, I hadn't seen that one.
Responsive government is good government. And good government is where we are acting as if we are public servants, not politicians. And that is what I choose to do and will continue to do for the people of the Great 28.
And the Great 28 are our neighbors. We're local. We're right here. It's not an abstract, far away area. So,
right.
All government is local government, someone said.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
I feel that. Of course, I get to see a lot of that here. But well, thank you so much for coming in. There was a lot of really important stuff we covered, and I look forward to being able to share this. Thank you so much for watching. That means you have chosen to make sure that you're informed about what's going on in the Statehouse in Columbus, and we'll see you next time.